Welcome back to Celebrity Radio. It's Alex Belfield talking to some of my favourite people and some of the UK's biggest stars. Hardeep Singh Kohli is the man who's done really everything on TV and radio. He's a broadcaster, journalist and stand-up comedian. He's coming to the Brighton Comedy Festival and he's joining us on the phone now to talk about his life and career. Hardeep, how are you doing?
I'm very well indeed. Very excited about coming to the seaside because I do like to be beside the seaside. I do like to be beside the sea. Tell me you've got a brass band and then you've got some tiddly on pom-poms.
It's good, isn't it? And especially at this time of the year when it's just getting nice and chilly. It's a bit like Barbados, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, in many ways. Whenever I'm in Brighton, I think, gosh, is this Barbados? Particularly when I've had a toot and a crack pipe. I'd rather be in Brighton than Barbados, to be honest. I nearly moved to Brighton in the 90s. I nearly was part of the Brixton-on-Sea posse.
It's a very cool place. I'm ginger and slightly obese, so they wouldn't let me in, you see.
Yes, I'm not ginger and I'm not obese, but I'm just brown, so they don't let me in most places these days. Particularly anywhere coastal in South East England, they get a bit nervous when we show up.
That's it. What's your life like now? Help me with it, because I know you as a broadcaster, as a journalist, as a funny man, but I didn't know you as a stand-up comedian. Is that what you're doing more of now?
I suppose it's become a bigger part of the kind of the offering. I mean, the truth is, I was never a stand-up. I was on the one show and folk thought I was a comedian, so they'd ask me, when are you next gigging so we can come and see you? And I spent a year explaining to them I wasn't a comedian, but in a way that felt quite rude because they thought I was and I was telling them I wasn't, so they felt foolish. Then I spent another year pretending I was about to tour in the town just too far away from them to attend, and I thought, you know what, if enough people think this, perhaps I should just do it.
So
8-9 years ago I started, yeah.
So if I'd have met you in Nottingham, you'd say you'd got a gig in Sheffield knowing that it was just an hour too far for me to be bothered to go?
I mean, luckily my knowledge of English geography was so exact I could work that one. Also knowing the train systems as I do, Nottingham to Sheffield was a straightforward train journey. I'd probably said something like, probably I would have gone further west. I'd have gone Bromsgrove from Nottingham because I've got to change it to Birmingham. So you understand what's in the hill. The details of this aren't important. We need to try and move on from being clinging on to details.
And what do you talk about? Because, I mean, what I loved about you on The One Show and Five Live, places like that, is that you've got a wit and you've got a charm about you. Is it you just spouting off about whatever's on your mind, or is it shticky stuff? Is it gag stuff? What do you do?
Well, I don't do gags because, I mean, listen, to be honest, there are much better gagmeisters than me on the circuit. I mean, hundreds of them. Brilliant stand-ups in that regard. There are funnier people than me, but what there isn't, there aren't storytellers. I think I'm quite a good storyteller, and that's a slightly different tradition. Although I've become quite good at stand-up and kind of off the cuff now, so I spend about 20-25 minutes just riffing with the audience, because I think I never want to be in that place where I have to check my tour details to see what town I'm in.
Right.
And it should always be obvious where I am, and you get that by making tonight's crowd feel like they've got a show that tomorrow's night's crowd won't get. And that's necessarily so if you're actually talking to people in the room and having a nice time. But the show is, I always like to theme a show because I think it helps me narrow down what I want to talk about. And last year's show was called Hardeep Is Your Love, and it was all about falling in love at middle age. And it was, I honestly thought, you know what, I'm just going to retire now because it was the best show I'd ever done, and I didn't think it could get any better. But this show, Big Band Strikes Again, it's probably better than last year's show, surprisingly. More surprising to me than anyone else, to be honest, because I didn't think I could be any better than last year. But yeah, it's been massive fun. The other thing about this is I've been doing this in Edinburgh for the month where I live. I live in Scotland. And I had 9 stories on my set list, and I've never got beyond number 3. Because I spend half an hour of my 1 hour in Edinburgh just chatting to the crowd.
How do you know a direction to make it fun? Is it what they do for a living? How do you make it interesting?
I don't really. The problem is, the question sort of answers itself in that if I'm thinking about how to make it funny, then it's never going to be funny.
Right.
And the funny thing is, folk generally know that you've just thought of that on the spot. They know you've just riffed that. They know that, and they love it. And also the immediacy of the moment. But there's a thing about, again, I'm really lucky. My audiences know me, and they're coming to see me. They're not coming for that comedy with somebody they've never heard of. They're coming to see Hardeep. So they're well disposed towards me already, and they know how my mind thinks.
Yeah.
And they want to laugh before they've even got in the room. I'm very lucky that way. They're kind of on my side to begin with.
I think that doing stand-up is probably one of the most terrifying gigs. You've done much bigger audiences, millions of people on the telly, millions on the radio. You've got a few hundred in a theatre. I wonder whether it's 10 times more terrifying because you've got nowhere to hide.
I can understand why people think that, but also I think, with the greatest respect to my colleagues and across broadcasting and comedy and the rest of it, what we do is an important function in life, but I am not saving anyone's life. I'm not a social worker. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not even a vet. Do you know what I mean? I mean, bless them. And neither am I a prime minister with, dealing with, big farming issues. And
yes, let's not talk about him today. This could get us into a very deep hole.
Well, I think it wasn't that deep a hole. The problem with the pig's man. Here's the thing. You asked me how I managed to keep an audience occupied. I have got an affliction. This is what my show's about. People think it's great being a stand-up. People think it's great being quick-witted. People think it's great being funny. It's not. It's terrible because I can't stop myself. I just did that there. I should have let that one go. Yes. I should have mentioned the pig's mouth and the depths of it. I can't help myself. There's a moment where you can make the gag and you go for it. And then that's the problem. That's what the show's about. You can't help it. But people are forgiving. I
suppose you could say you're a smart ass and you've made a career out of it. Good for you.
Well, the only part of my anatomy I get no complaints about is about my buttocks. So in that sense, in the American sense, I am a smart arse. Yes.
Now, when we look at your life, it's really interesting. I mean, born in London, but then you moved up to Glasgow.
Well, I'm Scottish through and through. I was educated here. If I was to play international sport, it would be for Scotland.
Right.
Because I've lived here since I was 3-4 years old. My first language is Scots English. So I had to adapt that. I had lived in London for 20 years. I've only just come back home 3 or 4 years ago. So I spent half my life in London, and I think London's great. It's just not Scotland, and this is my country. These are my people, and I don't really. It's a funny thing. I don't need to explain myself up here. People know what I'm talking about, literally. And there's a whole lexicon I had to stop using when I came to London, because the thing about London is they choose to understand what they choose to understand. Folk in Scotland watch EastEnders and watch Coronation Street and don't need subtitles.
Right.
Yet people in London struggle with the Scottish accent.
Mm.
So, it's back to my roots, back to my country, and back around my people. What a love for England. Some of my best friends know English people. Do you know what I mean? So I'm trying to, I try wherever possible to be supportive of the English.
I wonder how the act travels between Edinburgh and Brighton. I mean, geographically, they couldn't be further apart. Will you have to change the act slightly, or can you do the same?
Some of my favourite stand-up comedians are like Dara O'Brien, Sarah Millican, and Janie Godley. You may not have heard of Janie, but you've definitely heard of Dara and Sarah. And the three of them, their single greatest strength is the ability to read a room.
Right.
And that is to come out and actually take the temperature of the room, realise who's in, what the vibe is, what makes what you get away with, when you can get away with this sort of language or that sort of language, to avoid this, to avoid that, and almost intuitively know what it is. I've seen Dara do it live. He is absolutely astonishing. He knows the room. He's super bright. I've seen him do an hour of completely riffed material. Dara is super intelligent and a lovely, affable, charming guy.
I just wish he'd slow down a bit. That's the only thing I always say to him. Sometimes it's almost exhausting. It's like a Ken Dodd show in an hour.
I know, but also like socially, when you're sitting having dinner with him, it's like, just slow down. So I'm trying to eat and listen to you at the same time. He's a great guy.
And the other thing is, he's not as old as his face looks. I was always amazed that we're about the same age. I thought he was sort of 70, 75, something like that. It's extraordinary.
Dara's younger than me. It's rather depressing. So much more successful. Bugger. So yeah, I mean, I think you could have read that, because there again, Brighton to me feels, although it's a town, it feels like a city audience. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Brighton feels like London to me.
And I guess they're transient cities, aren't they? London, Brighton, Edinburgh, they're places where people are coming to see comedy opposed to people who necessarily live there.
But also the fact that it's couched within the festival is, again, a different commodity. So I played Run Call the other night, first day of the tour, And that's, you know, a lovely crowd. It couldn't have been sweeter, warmer, more engaging. But that was like the only thing on in Runcorn that weekend.
Right.
Whereas in the comedy festival, you've got a choice of places to go. And it's slightly different in that it will be less of my crowd and more of a comedy crowd.
Yeah.
So I'm aware that I need to be funny for them.
And then, of course, the other guys are going to want to come and see you. Does that make you nervous, or is that thrilling?
Alistair McGowan came in to the Edinburgh show, and I don't really get nervous. Like I say, I'm going to do the thing I do, and I'll do it as well as I can because it matters to me.
Yeah.
So that's all I can do. But Alistair was just lovely about it. I was just really quite blown away. And then, interestingly, a friend of mine came in who saw my first ever stand-up run, and then this one, and he couldn't believe how much it improved it. Thank God it's improving, you know, kind of getting better at learning all the time. But the more you learn, the more you realise there is to learn.
Right.
You know, and you know, I go and see a lot of comics. You know, and I love it. There's nothing nice. I went to see David O'Doherty, and if any of your listeners get the chance to go and see David, honestly, I was supposed to see him 6 weeks ago, and I nearly cancelled the tour. Like, as I walked out, I thought,
wow.
I will never be like 10% as funny as him. Why am I even pretending? And then he told me afterwards just to keep going because he needs the competition.
What for you is the most thrilling? TV, live TV, you've done a lot of that, live radio, pre-recorded radio, standing on stage live?
Okay, it's interesting that they're often characterised as being different experiences. I would just spin the bottle a little bit and suggest to you that they're all the same experience. What thrills me is storytelling. What thrills me is engaging with audience. We use the word community a lot. Yeah. And actually, community is about people bonding and joining and having a shared experience. That's what I hope to create every night on stage, every time I broadcast on radio or telly, every time I write a book, every time I write a piece, every time I do anything. Every time I cook a meal, you should bring people together. And that's actually the single most important thing. If there's any worth, if there's any gold left at the end of the panning of my life, it should be that. That should be the little thing that glistens and sparkles amongst the grit and the dirt, is the fact that all you ever tend to do is bring people together and make them for an hour or 2 hours or amount of time to feel bonded and together, and to realise that in our own lives, in our own self-lived experiences, there also exists the experiences of others. Because if we can share together for an hour, if folk in Brighton can watch a fat brown fellow with a turban and a pirate beard talk and they can engage with that, then there's surely a wider commonality amongst all people.
You know, you make a good point there. For me, you were one of the first broadcasters that made us realise that we are all the same and we are one people. Your heritage lies in the Punjab with your parents, but you're just one of us. I think people in the past have made the mistake of seeing differences, not similarities. And you were really the bastion of that, weren't you, bringing that to TV and radio?
You actually lift a line from one of my shows, which is I'm all about, my first tour was always, I sort of ended the show by talking about looking at similarities and rather than differences. I think, listen, my favourite film is a film called The Godfather.
Right.
About an Italian-American gangster whose family import olive oil. I've done none of those things. I am none of those things. Yet, it's my favourite film. I engage with every scene and every beat of that movie.
Yeah. Why
is that? Because story is universal. That isn't about being an American or Italian or a gangster. It's actually about a man. And that's what I am, and a man's journey and his own internal dialogue and dilemmas and all the rest of it. And this is what we need to discover, that, you know, listen, I just bumped into an MP friend of mine, one of the SNP MPs, who's going over to Turkey on holiday and staying in the hotel near the beach where that Syrian kid was washed up.
Right.
Now, why did that one child change the entire course of history, where millions of refugees for years have been treading across desert and crossing seas to try and find a home for themselves? Because in that child, we all saw our own family. We all saw our own life, you know?
Yeah.
And that is what story is about. Good or bad, you know? We chimed with that, you know? And that's the power of community. And in this day and age, politics is difficult to avoid in conversations about community, but it does feel to me as if our communities are being broken down. But actually, there are not other peoples to break down. We create our communities. And if we choose to convene, albeit 100 folk in a Brighton theatre to do a bit of comedy. That's community, that's strength.
Yeah.
100 people together are stronger than 100 people apart.
Young people now think nothing of being in a class of 14 different races, 14 different languages, 14 different types of people, sexual orientation, cultures. It is amazing, and it's just normal now, and that's where we need to get. I think it's old people and older generations that are the problem, isn't it?
Well, it's interesting. In Scotland, if you broke down the vote, the referendum vote, youngsters voted overwhelmingly yes, and the old folk voted no. So in a sense, the older generation held the younger generation back. If your perception is one, it's the same as mine. But equally, my 17-year-old daughter, when she was 12, came home and said she was in a play with a guy and she had to kiss the guy. And I was being the pretend dad, being angry. And she was, "That's okay, he's gay, you're fine." I kind of thought, you're 12.
Right.
And that's not a problem for you.
Yeah.
You know this language. When I was 12 years old, gay is what you used to beat someone up. Even if they weren't gay, you'd call them gay. And we think the world isn't getting any better. And much as technology accelerates and overtakes us, like Usain Bolt out the blocks, you know what? We still have a degree of morality. My kids, your kids, our kids still know that sexuality, gender, race and stuff don't matter.
One of the things I can't stand, and the place I saw it the worst, was the BBC for box ticking, giving women jobs who aren't qualified because they need women, or giving Asian people jobs because they need to tick a box. For me, all that does is underscore that the people who are actually good at doing it, they become undermined by it.
That's no different from what they've been doing with men. Men that didn't deserve the jobs have been getting the jobs for decades.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So it's because we perceive men as being the norm and acceptable. I mean, there are shockingly beige, vanilla, talentless men who works at the BBC.
Yep.
And also, I personally believe in a degree of positive discrimination because I believe it makes people think about who they're hiring. The patriarchy, the power of the patriarchy is massive. Are we really saying, you and I, intelligent men, are we really saying that the reason that there are 75%, 73% male politicians is because men are better than women to that extent? No. We don't believe that. So why are there so many more men than women, almost 3 to 1? Why is that the case? Something's stopping those women coming through, isn't it?
Do you know what I also think, though, with that? When I look at Prime Minister's questions on a Wednesday, I think maybe it's just that women are smarter, that they don't want to get involved in all the shenanigans and nonsense that goes on, whereas men are going to sit there willy-waggling and pretending that they're big men.
Well, you've said willy-waggling, and then you told me not to talk about the pig's head. Here's the thing. If you look at government, if you look at parliaments, like the Scottish Parliament's constituted, geographically, rather physically, the chamber itself is circular and non-confrontational. You go around the world, those sorts of parliament buildings where it's not face-to-face across a dispatch box is a better environment for women to flourish in. And I say to you that if we think it's a waste of time, if it wasn't women we were talking about, imagine we lived in a country that was 50% black and 50% white, and we didn't have representation of our black people because we thought, you know what, it's not for them. We wouldn't write that off. We would change the thing that wasn't for them to make it more equal, to get half our population. This is worse than half. We're now talking about the majority of our population being overlooked. Yeah. But also this, ask yourself, so David Dimbleby, he was actually a friend of mine and a man I respect and adore and love at 75 on the telly. Show me a 75-year-old woman with the exception of Mary Berry on the telly. Women disappear at 50. Something happens. And it needs to stop happening. And
again, it's not the public, it's the people making the decisions. So where is the root of the problem? Is it because the top of these organisations is not just the BBC, it's governments, it's council, it's any public service, it seems. Is it because it's ran by too many white middle-class university graduate men at the top? Is that the fundamental issue with all of this?
Peter Bazalgette, an old boss of mine from way back in the 90s, referred to, he's now head of the Arts Council, he talks about things being too pale, stale and male. And that's
never heard that. It's good. Yeah, very good.
But again, we need to be aware of the fact that this is a majority Caucasian country. The majority of people involved should be Caucasian. That's the correct thing. I've no qualms with that. But I'm just saying, if we want, I mean, look at our economy, look at our world, look at our politics. If we really did have the best people doing it, would we be in this state? I ask you, if half the board and the Royal Bank of Scotland were women, would they have bought ABN AMRO? Would they have become the leper bank that they are now? I would argue no. Would Barclays have been in a state? Would Lehman Brothers have gone down if half the board were women? I don't think so. It's not about gender, it's about balance.
Right. And fair representation of demographics, that's what you're talking about, isn't it?
Baby, I'm a feminist, so you know what I mean?
Yeah.
With it.
Me too.
Yeah, it's just about actually, does someone's sexuality have anything, if someone's gay or straight, does that mean they're a good politician or a good journalist or a good nurse? Obviously not. So how does someone's gender have any bearing on the output of their job?
Yeah.
Are women less intelligent than men? Because if you listen to some folk who actually believe women have got the ability, they sometimes turn out to be apologists of the patriarchy.
Yeah.
I grew up in an age where I still remember when I first joined the BBC that female secretaries would get their bums slapped by male bosses.
Right.
Now, I found that weird at the time, but I find it even weirder now when you grow older and you understand politics a little bit. These incremental changes, the fact that we've had a Margaret Thatcher, the fact that we've got a Theresa May, the fact that there are more prominent women, big successful, changes the outlook. The fact that there are openly gay men and women everywhere. I mean, can you imagine as kids an openly lesbian woman presenting a television program? It just wouldn't have happened.
Right.
It's just not an issue anymore, And you know what? Listen, America's got a black prime minister, president. That was unheard of, and yet still they're a country driven and riven by racism.
Yeah.
I just think the way he's treated as a president is unbelievable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's despicable.
America's a fundamentally racist country.
Yeah.
And how can it not be? It's predicated on the subjugation of the Native Americans, which was a racist act. How can it not be anything but that?
This is also a country where you can't show a breast on TV after 9 o'clock, let alone before, yet their number one business is porn, riddled with hypocrisy, isn't it?
But also, you can't show a breast, but you can go buy a gun.
Right. Yes. Whilst you're doing
Chris Rock thing, where he says, don't ban guns, just charge $10,000 for each bullet.
You're quite right. It's a very good point.
But I hate you, but I don't. I'm going to save up and get 3 jobs to save up to buy a bullet to kill you.
That's a great line.
America's the policeman of the world.
Yeah.
That's what they want to export to Iraq and Afghanistan. Really?
Yeah.
That's why we're fighting illegal wars in the Middle East.
Listen, I've really loved talking to you. I can't wait to see Iraq live. I'm sorry I haven't seen it up to now, but you're back on tour. And have you got a website where we can find out the full tour details? Obviously, you're doing the Brighton Comedy Festival.
It's via So Comedy. So Comedy.
Right.
Graham Norton's company.
Brilliant. Hardeep Singh Kohli is a hugely entertaining man, witty, insightful, and a great presenter as well. We're going to see you back on the One Show in the near future?
Probably not. I'm not so keen on. I do Sunday Morning Live, actually. I do the interviews on Sunday Morning Live.
I thought you were really great at that. And again, you brought an interesting take on many of their incredibly dull items.
Well, thank you. Yeah, but I think dull is our BBC primetime seems not to live these days, so good luck with that.
Hardeep Singh Kohli, one of my favourite people. Good to talk to you.
Thank you. Listen, I really appreciate your very sweet and kind man. Do come to the show, yeah?
I'd love to. Thanks very much.
Yeah.